What's up, guys? Part one of the bi-weekly injury update. We're going through the injury dump, and let's start right off with Brian Thomas. So Brian Thomas has a high ankle sprain. He already missed last week. I would project that he is missing this upcoming week. There's a reason why they signed Jacoby Myers, and he actually did really well in his debut in a new offense. Travis Hunter also expected to be out. He's on IR, but seems like he probably has a knee sprain because MCL sprains are what would take about grade 2 would take about 3 to 4 weeks. They seem to think he's on appropriate recovery for that. If he had had a meniscus tear that they were debating about surgery, I don't think that they would have been as confident about this news. Aside from that, next up we have Bucky Irving. We have so many updates about Bucky that don't mean anything. We got word that his foot was fine, but we already knew, if you listened very closely, that Bulls said that the shoulder injury from week 1 was more concerning than that foot injury. So I think that he's got a partial thickness rotator cuff tear. I think they're still waiting to see if it calms down. We've talked before how it can take 6 months before they decide they need to get surgery. So we're going to just be in this limbo period. And depending on your risk tolerance, you can decide to hold him or you can try and trade him off. But as of right now, there's not really a definitive timeline. Chris Godwin also not practicing, also doesn't have a timeline for return. And the issue with there is that he had an ankle dislocation last season, then he injured the fibula in the lower ankle region this season that they're saying is not related, which I think is BS. It's absolutely related. That's a really significant injury, and there's a high risk of recurrent injuries in that region for about a year or two afterwards. That's why we say that it's a long road to recovery with an ankle dislocation. Aside from that, AJ Brown did not do well, but there's a chance that he's just recovering from that hamstring strain. He's only about 2 weeks out, and we've talked before about how the older a player is with a hamstring, the longer it can take them to ramp up. So I wouldn't really discount him being bad right now. I think that he might just have a slower recovery from the hamstring injury. Jayden Daniels, we talked before about how his elbow snapped in half. I was like, I don't think he's out for a season. Everyone was like, no, you're crazy. But they didn't put him on IR. So they said there's no ligament damage, which is not true. There's some ligament damage, but there's no ligament damage that requires surgical repair. But if your elbow dislocates, there is some ligament damage. The big thing there is that there's no fracture. It doesn't seem like he's going to get surgical repair. So I would say that he should be back in about 3 to 4 weeks. So someone was asking me whether they should keep him or Joe Burrow. I would probably keep Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's got way more upside in the Bengals offense than Jayden Daniels does currently with how Washington's playing. Aside from that, Samaje Perine had that hip drop tackle, and he has a high ankle sprain, and he's going to be out for a little bit longer. Chase Brown did really well without him there, and I would expect that to continue. Joe Mixon, if you tuned in last week, I talked about how my boy was down in Austin, and they said that Joe Mixon got injured in some sort of non-football accident and then ended up going outside the team to get surgical repair. They messed up the surgery, and that's what everyone's freaking out about now. But regardless, I don't know if that's true or not, but everything I heard from the beginning of the season when I thought he was due now draft was that he injured the same foot that he had a midfoot sprain in that cost him an entire season at one point. So I don't expect Joe Mixon to be back this season. Aside from that, Brandon Aiyuk, still no timetable for practicing. Not really sure what's happening there other than he had a multi-ligament injury. But if you have no one else on the waivers that you can put on IR, no one on your team to put on IR, he is worthwhile to keep in that IR slot because if he does return, he should provide you some value. Ricky Pearsall, they said that he's going to practice this Wednesday. So we might finally be seeing the return. But we've heard these stories before where people are just like, yeah, he's going to practice, and he doesn't practice. But if Ricky Pearsall does come back this Wednesday, I would anticipate that he plays this week, and I would definitely be okay slotting him in as a flex player. Brock Purdy seemed like he was really close to being the backup last week, so let's clarify that. He was close to being quarterback 2. So I would still say that he's unlikely to start this week, but I think we should see him back on the field. Maybe he'll even take a couple snaps to see how it feels, but I do think he should be back by next week. Omarion Hampton, really great news there. He's back at practice. With that being said, I said before, I think he's going to return. And I said I think he's going to return around week 13. A lot of muscle atrophy likely there, but he does have a good amount of time to get rid of that atrophy now with a couple weeks to ramp up. So if you still got him, keep a hold of him. And you might even be able to entertain some trade offers now. People are thinking he's coming back. Maybe they'll give you some offers. And in that situation, I would be offloading Omarion Hampton, depending on who the offer is for. Aside from that, my phone shut off, my other phone. Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed should be back around week 12. He will have recovered adequately from that Jones fracture surgery as well as the collarbone. So, yeah, he's a decent stash if there's no one else out there either. DeAndre Swift, we talked before about how I didn't think that his missed practice Friday would be any concern. He got 14 points. That was solid. I think that that's worthwhile to place him in the starting lineup, and I think he's going to be dealing with his groin kind of on and off throughout the season, but as long as he's active, I think he's a worthy start. Quinshon Judkins only had about 3.4 yards per carry. Didn't really put up stellar numbers, but he was back out there. He's probably like a flex to RB2 the rest of the way, unless anything drastically changes with the Browns. Josh Jacobs, beast, absolute dog. He was playing through his injury. He put up a touchdown. He put up decent yardage numbers. Trey Benson. So out of Hampton, Benson, Bucky, I put up a video a couple weeks ago. I said that Benson's the guy I want to own, and that's because the meniscectomy has a clear route to return, no significant performance issues, and I would say that he comes back week 12 and ramps up. Should be a good player for the fantasy football playoffs, in my opinion. Garrett Wilson, dude, this sucks. He re-aggravated that knee injury. They talked about how he hit an inflection, and now they're calling it a sprain. That means that he has a PCL sprain. That's the kind of injury that happens when your knee gets hit inflection. So with that being said, he's going to be out for about 4 weeks, I think, and that would put him back around 13, 14. I mean, he's not a drop per se because, like, he's a good player. He should be decent in fantasy football playoffs. You can't really drop a wide receiver like that. Hopefully you have an IR slot open and you can put him in there. Rhamondre Stevenson, I know a lot of people love Treveyon Henderson. He did really well, but Rhamondre Stevenson did practice on Monday, so that puts him on track for returning this week. In addition, we saw Treveyon Henderson have that knee injury, which he scored a touchdown afterwards, but he did still have that knee injury, possibly has a knee sprain going on there, so he'd be a little bit limited. I would anticipate it is a brutal timeshare upcoming this week. Vrabel does like his veterans, so if Rhamondre is active, I don't see him going fully to Treveyon Henderson, especially with that possible knee injury. Aaron Jones, I said before that when he was out, he was a great play because he's a good running back, and the backup didn't really do anything, and Aaron Jones is good. He is playing through some injuries, and he's putting up numbers. Love it. J.K. Dobbins has this foot sprain. He's getting a second opinion for it. We still didn't get any kind of news on what that second opinion said, but usually when you get a second opinion for a football player wants it, it's because the first opinion said he's going to miss time. With the foot sprain as well, that also is something I get concerned about missing a couple weeks for. So he already missed one. We'll see what happens. But RJ Harvey is not the answer in that offense, so unfortunate there. Brenton Strange has a hip injury. He's due to be off IR in a couple weeks. I think that week 12 would be, actually he should be off of IR now, but I think week 11, week 12 would be a reliable return for him. Jackson Dart, dude, this is kind of sad. Jackson Dart had his 4th concussion evaluation, I believe, of the past year. That's not good. I would anticipate that they will not clear him within this week. So he will plan for someone else if you're planning for Jackson Dart to be your quarterback this week. And I hope they really put him through the vigorous concussion protocol, make sure that he's all good to go before returning him back to practice. Terry McLaurin re-aggravated that quad injury. He's already out for a bunch of weeks. I talked before about trading him in the beginning when he had that first quad injury. Hopefully you did. You probably won't be able to trade him now, but I really don't think he's a hold with what happened so far. Romeo Doubs, he has a chest bruise. Not really too much information on it. We've seen Puka return back from a rib bruise. It's a pain tolerance issue. Maybe he has a mildly fractured rib. As long as it's not multiple fractures in a row in that rib cage, he should be good to return back. So we'll see what happens there. Dalton Kincaid, he had a hamstring injury in the game. I would anticipate that he's up for a multi-week absence, as we've seen in every hamstring, except for Ibuka, who did not do well after returning back the first week for the next 2 weeks. And then he went off again. So maybe they should have kept him out for those 3 weeks, like all hamstrings usually need. Kami Fairbairn. Maybe I butchered that name, but people have been asking about him. He's got a quad injury. He missed 5 games for it in 2023. I think that he is going to miss a couple weeks for this. It's a kicker. It's a major leg there. Mike Evans should return back week 15 for a collarbone. And Calvin Ridley, hamstring, 50% shot this week. Aside from that, Isaiah Pacheco should come back this week or next week from that MCL injury. Elton Jenkins, he had a fibula fracture ankle. I think he's out for the season, to be honest, based on that. Aside from that, DJ Moore likely had an AC joint sprain. He should be able to come back and play, but it's a pain tolerance issue. Davante Adams had an oblique spasm. He should be able to return back this upcoming week as well. Lane Johnson had his ankle rolled, played through a high ankle sprain, but might miss this upcoming week. and Oronde Gadsden should play this upcoming week as well.